Hello and welcome to a very special episode 736 of the official EstablishTheRun.com podcast. My name is Adam Levitan. I am one of the co-founders here at ETR, and it is with great honor and pleasure I am once again joined by fellow co-founder Evan Silva. Evan, welcome back. Great to have you back. How are you feeling? How's it going?
Feeling great, man. Glad to be back. I was thinking about it and joking, but kind of not joking. When was the last time I went like 4 or 5 weeks without doing a podcast? It might have been in the 20th century. I'm like kind of nervous for this show to all of a sudden be back. But I took the time off in the perfect segment of the NFL schedule because I went back. I thought that I would have missed 100 items, but I mean there was really nothing that moved the needle over the last 30 days. I wish that I had lost a little bit more weight. I worked out hardcore like every single day, but I ate too much. I mean, I didn't eat like bad stuff, but I ate like in decent volume. I wanted to lose 30 pounds in 30 days, but I only wound up losing like 15. But I'll tell you what, like 7 or 10 days into it, it just kind of occurred to me, like it's just, especially since I'm diabetic and with this extreme sedentary lifestyle that we live, it's like all about routine. And it's waking up early in the morning. It is making my bed. It is not laying in bed and scrolling on my phone for 2 hours. It's getting out of bed. It's like stretching, maybe reading a book, working out twice a day. This is something that I'm going to do. So I already was working out like one time a day on the weekdays, but that's only 5 hours a week. That's definitely not enough for someone who lives such a sedentary lifestyle. So I'm going to add on to that like a 20-minute walk, or I bought a jump rope and some free weights and a bunch of little stuff that I can do on my back patio to supplement that. But going to the gym once a day, which is actually way more than a lot of people do, that is not enough for people that live the lifestyle that we live. So I'm gonna supplement that and continue to be like meticulous and stick to a routine because my routine had gotten out of whack. But now I think that I know what my routine needs to be going forward in order to live a healthy lifestyle and not wake up every other day feeling like shit.
I totally hear you. I don't feel good when I'm not on my routine. You know what I mean? And like one of the worst parts for me of July and August, it's busy, but it's something different every day. I love the routine of the NFL season. Like this day, this time, I know exactly what I'm doing. But yeah, love to hear it, man. Glad that you're feeling better. What I wanted to say was just, I was overwhelmed by how many people sent notes and not just notes, but like thoughtful notes. I mean, hundreds of replies on YouTube from our last show together, hundreds of replies on Twitter. I got dozens of DMs offering support to Evan. And, it struck me how many people Evan impacted by not just doing this, but doing it publicly, And like Evan and I never got into this stuff to be known on the internet or, be a pseudo celebrity or people that others look up to. But whether we like it or not, I've realized that it's true, like people do look up to us. And from the messages that I got, tons of people feel inspired to take action, get help, make steps towards improving their life/health. So I thought that was really cool and important, and not only Evan's health, but a huge positive just overall for the whole community. So
yeah, and I read it all too on Twitter, YouTube, Discord. People, I guess, sent emails into Establish and Run support. Like I read it all, and I want to say thank you so much to everybody, and especially to the people that it inspired to maybe make a move in their own life to try to improve their health, not health. That was particularly inspiring to me, and honestly puts me on. It makes me feel more accountable. That I can't slide back into the bad routine. I got to stick with the good routine every single day, especially that because I'm diabetic and I don't want to feel like crap when I wake up in the morning anymore.
100%. All right. On today's show, we are going to cover the top 23 news stories from the OTAs that went down over the last month. We're going to discuss and decide whether each piece of news, and I use news in quotes because as Evan said, there has not been a lot of hard news, but we're going to discuss and decide whether each piece of news is something we should care about and adjust rankings for, or if it's fake news. At the end of the show, we'll also touch on some of the latest changes to Silva's top 150, which you can access if you are a Draft Kit Pro subscriber. Number 23 on the news. So all the reports out of Pittsburgh, OTAs, were that Russ Wilson is way ahead of Justin Fields right now. You know, coaches keep calling it open competition, but Russ is in pole position, took most of the first team reps at OTAs. So as of now, I would call it like, in my mind, I don't know what Evan thinks. In my mind, I think Russ is like 90% to start week one, maybe 95% to start week one. That doesn't mean that I think Russ will start every game this year, but I think he's really likely to start week one. Evan, what's your reaction to Russ Wilson getting the overwhelming majority of first team snaps at Steelers OTAs?
I think that it is not surprising in the context of when the Steelers acquired Justin Fields. After acquiring Russell Wilson, Mike Tomlin came out and said pretty vehemently that this was going to be Russ Wilson's job, and they're treating him like the starter. And I mean, there was the stuff that came out about Justin Fields potentially returning kicks. And, you know, to me, I would like to see them, I personally would like to see them open the competition, because Justin Fields, I think, has a chance to be the Steelers' long-term solution at quarterback. Russell Wilson does not. But that's not the way that they're treating it. You know, this is a Mike Tomlin thing. I think it's probably an Arthur Smith thing. The way that they want to play offense is run the piss out of the ball and try to play elite defense. And that's how Russell Wilson had success early in his career. And that's kind of the image that I think that they want this offense to have in 2024.
Yeah, there's been a lot of talk in the best ball streets about, can we take Justin Fields in the hopes that he's the Steelers starter during the best ball playoffs? My thought is that Russ is likely almost certainly going to start week one. In the beginning of the schedule, I feel like he can play well. They play Falcons, Broncos, Chargers, Colts, Cowboys, Raiders, Jets, Giants, Commanders to open the season. And so Russ may get some wins under his belt and get a little bit more job security there. So I have not been doing the Justin Fields thing late in best ball drafts. I think just too many ways I take a zero, but I understand the upside case if Fields starts in the best ball playoffs and you got him in the 18th round. All right, let's move to the number 22 story out of OTAs, Browns wide receivers. So reportedly, Jerry Jeudy was playing a lot of slot at OTAs, and also reportedly, at least from the Athletics perspective, Cedric Tillman might be ahead of Elijah Moore. Now, I didn't really know there was a full-blown competition there. I probably should have. I was under the assumption that they preferred Elijah Moore, but maybe that was a bad assumption. Evan, what do you think about Jeudy in the slot, Tillman versus Elijah Moore? Anything else on Browns wide receivers?
Judy's played a lot of slot, even going back to Alabama. So that's not surprising that they might see that as his best position. I think it's going to be an open competition during training camp and preseason. Cedric Tillman played a decent amount of snaps last season and really showed very, very little. There were some people that liked him. He played at Tennessee with Jalen Hyatt. Some people thought that he was actually the book on him was that he was actually the Tennessee's number one receiver before getting hurt, and then Jalen Hyatt took over that role. So there were some people that were high on, but he really showed nothing last year. I think that it could end up being, though, Jerry Jeudy as like the Z, Amari Cooper as the X, and Elijah Moore as the slot. That would be the alternative to this. And I just think it's going to play out in training camp. If Cedric Tillman steps forward, he takes over the Z position opposite Amari Cooper, then Jerry Jeudy sticks in the slot, and Elijah Moore is the number 4. It's just an open competition. We're going to have to wait on that.
I don't know what you think about Jerry Jeudy, but I've actually been taking Jerry. He's been going around like pick 130. And given how thirsty everyone is in the best ball streets for wide receivers, I'm actually kind of shocked that Jerry Jeudy is lasting until pick 130. If he's going to play in the slot here, or at least some in the slot or a lot in the slot, I feel even better about it. So yeah, that was kind of my main takeaway. Like, I want to probably get more Jeudy, and the Jeudy Deshaun Watson backdoors I think are interesting.
Yeah, I do. I think that one thing to note, and we don't know what to expect from Deshaun Watson. My expectations are not particularly high at this point. I don't think that anybody's really should be, based on how he's played. I mean, the guy has barely played really for the last 3 years, number one. And when he has, he's been thoroughly unimpressive. Just looks like an uncomfortable player. But Ken Dorsey their new OC, has a lot of spread background. He's the Brian Daboll sort of guy, and with no Nick Chubb for however long, are they going to try to play spread and throw the ball a lot? That would be notable for the receivers that we just discussed, and obviously David Njoku.
Yeah, I don't think Deshaun Watson's shoulder is 100% yet, but he was throwing at OTAs. But that's something to watch in training camp. He was throwing at OTAs, but I don't think he threw every day.
Yeah, I just think that this might not be the ground and pound Browns
Yes.
offense that we've kind of seen for the last several years with Nick Chubb at the forefront.
Yep. All right. Number 21 story. While you were gone, Evan, somehow, Sam Darnold got huge votes of confidence. I don't particularly know why or where, but everybody seems to think now that Sam Darnold's going to start week 1 and he's going to hold the job for a while, which when you take a quarterback in the top 15 of the draft, typically recent history is he plays and he plays a lot. And so I actually like JJ McCarthy as a late round stab because, man, I mean, Nick Mullins and Josh Dobbs had productive fantasy games. I mean, Nick Mullins had, I think it was 2 or 3 300-yard games in just a few starts last year in this scheme in the dome with Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison, et cetera. So how much do you buy this Sam Darnold hype? I can't believe I'm saying that, but there is Sam Darnold hype out there out of Minnesota.
The reason to buy it would be what you just mentioned, the infrastructure, the extreme quarterback friendly infrastructure. We were talking about in our private Slack at one point. I threw out like, yo, who do you guys think? I mean, what is there a team that offers a better infrastructure for a quarterback than Minnesota? The answer was maybe San Francisco, but that would be about it.
Mm-hmm.
They play indoors. They have studs across they have a good offensive line. They have really good pass catchers. They've got Kevin O'Connell. They have this history of a bunch of guys coming in like almost off the street last year and having statistical success. JJ McCarthy had barely 700 career college pass attempts. He's coming out as a redshirt sophomore. I don't know that he's going to be ready. And Sam Darnold's still only 26 years old. I know that people have had enough of Sam Darnold, I'm sure. But I think that he is set up to succeed
Yeah.
in this particular environment.
I mean, one thing you can say about Sam Darnold is arm talent. Like when he throws the football, you can tell he has why he was number 1 overall pick. I mean, dude can really throw the football.
Another thing is that he has the ability to get the ball to number 1 receivers. Remember he had that stretch with DJ Moore.
Mm-hmm.
He had some big games back in the day with Robbie Anderson. So if he gets under center, I would be. He's going to get under center, I think. But for as long as he's under center, I'm going to maintain a level of confidence in Justin Jefferson. The ancillary receivers are the guys that I would be more worried about.
Vikings have a tough-ish first 5 games, and they have a bye in week 6. So if Darnold struggles or if it's up and down through those first 5 games, maybe you see McCarthy after the bye in week 6. We'll see there. All right. Story 20 is Khalil Herbert roster security out of The Athletic. The Athletic keeps doing this, and I like The Athletic beat reporters for the Bears, and they keep speculating that Khalil Herbert could be on the roster bubble. Doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Their thinking is that they gave DeAndre Swift a bunch of money. They took Roshan Johnson to draft last year. Khalil Herbert is somewhat expendable. The problem with saying that is Khalil Herbert's good. I mean, Khalil Herbert was PFF's number 16 running back last year out of 63 qualifiers. They're not going to get much for him in the trade market. So, like, why? Where is the speculation coming from? Evan, what do you think about Bears' backfield right now?
Yeah, it just doesn't make a lot of sense to me because DeAndre Swift has not been a historical picture of health. Roshan Johnson had a kind of up and down rookie season, and Khalil Herbert kind of brings a different skill set than him. And also, he only costs barely over $1 million. So it's certainly not a contract issue that would usher Khalil Herbert out of there because, I mean, he's super, super cheap on a salary cap that's what now? Almost $250 million in the NFL. Like, he's only costing $1 million. You know that he's a quality runner. He has flaws in the passing game, certainly in pass protection, but he's a quality runner. I think he's going to be on the team. And sometimes people in May, June, early July, just they need something to write.
Yeah. And we haven't moved on Khalil Herbert's ranking. Because if he's on this team, I mean, DeAndre Swift, like Evan said, no lock to be productive as a runner between the tackles, no lock to stay healthy. And we know Khalil Herbert can be productive as a runner. So we've stayed pretty strong on Khalil Herbert's ranking despite all this noise, and I feel pretty good about it. All right. This one, Evan, scares me, man. You got to talk me off the ledge on this one. Number 19 is Chase Brown. Played just 3 third down snaps last season. And then you get a bunch of speculation from the beat writers that the Bengals want to add a pass down back. If Samaje Perine gets cut out of Denver, which has been widely speculated out of Denver, it would make a lot of sense for the Bengals to go back and bring Samaje Perine. And so the concern with Chase Brown is the goal line touches are likely going to Zach Moss. And if Chase Brown can't play in the pass game, well, what exactly is his role? And so that concerns me for a guy that I've been taking a lot, in the 120, 130 range. So what's your reaction, Evan, to all this stuff out of Bengals backfield and Chase Brown?
Well, Samaje Perine has not been cut yet. And once he does get onto the free agent market, assuming that he is cut, then the Bengals, are going to need to give him the best deal that he possibly can. So it's a lot of projection here with the Samaje Perine stuff. I think that Chase Brown is a really good football player. Going back to his time at Illinois, he was a workhorse. He had 328 carries in his final season. He's a guy that I think that is worth betting on. Because obviously they did not trust him in pass protection. A lot of college running backs don't pass protect at all, or it's almost not even taught. Actually, Daniel Jeremiah had a tweet about this literally yesterday. Just watching college running backs try to pass protect, it's like a circus.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that Chase Brown is just going to get better in that area. A lot of rookie running backs come in, they can't pass protect, or they're not trusted at all in their first year, and then by year 2, all of a sudden they are trusted, or they get at least competent in that area. So I don't know. I think that Chase Brown is worth betting on as a football player because I think he's good at the game, and he's the kind of guy that is going to improve in an area where he's previously deficient.
I think it's important to allow these guys room to get better. Like, just because you're in the NFL doesn't mean you can't get better. And so I want to allow room for that. Certainly Chase Brown showed us he can be very, very explosive. We are thinking about building in some unlisted work into the projections for Bengals backfield with the idea that they might sign someone. Samaje Perine, probably a worst case scenario for Zach Moss and Chase Brown, but we'll see if they end up adding someone. Let's go to number 18, Courtland Sutton, suggesting that he could hold out come training camp. I don't see what leverage Courtland Sutton has. He'll be 29 years old this season. Previously has a torn ACL on his resume. Courtland Sutton's only been over 1.66 yards per route run, which is not very high. He's only been over that number once in his entire career. So I don't know what leverage Courtland Sutton has to hold out. Any thoughts on that situation and how you think about him this year with Bo Nix?
Yeah, and it's funny. This comes at a time when the Broncos have been talking up Tim Patrick coming off injury. Tim Patrick is sort of a similarly built player to Courtland Sutton. Marvin Mims is going to probably have an expanded role in his second season. They drafted Troy Franklin at the top of the 4th round, and they signed Josh Reynolds. So that creates even less leverage for Courtland Sutton. I don't know. I don't hold out threats this time of year. Like, we'll see. I'd be skeptical that results in anything positive for Courtland Sutton.
Agreed. I just the only thing on the Broncos pass catchers I want to say is that I want to allow room that Bo Nix can surprise and be like really good. I don't think he's going to come out and do what CJ Stroud did. But at this time last year, I did not think CJ Stroud's rookie season was in the range of outcomes at all. I thought it was like impossible that CJ Stroud would go out and do that last year. I don't think it's likely or even in the realm that Bo Nix goes out and shreds this year, but I want to at least allow some possibility that Bo Nix is like really good as a rookie.
All right. Who is not going to agree with you on that is Anthony Amico. But I think it's going to be really interesting to see how this offense works in Denver, because last year they were like dump-offs and deep shots with Russell Wilson. Sean Payton has run all kinds of different offenses. I think he wants to play a lot of quick game. And he had some success with Teddy Bridgewater. Can Bo Nix be as successful as Teddy Bridgewater was?
Yeah.
And I think that's a time will tell thing. But I think that that's the way that they're going to want to
Yeah.
play, not like they did last year with Russell Wilson. They're going to want to play a lot of quick timing stuff, get the ball out of Bo Nix's hands quickly and to the playmakers. And that's what he did at Oregon, so it makes perfect
I
sense.
mean, they took Bo Nix 12th overall. He better be as good as Teddy Bridgewater. You know what I mean? Like, he better be, or that's not going to look good. Okay. I'm hoping you can help me here on number 17, Evan. I'm so confused by this Brandon Ayuk situation. Something about Instagram Live, and he's boys with Jaden Daniels, and I don't know. But the quote was from Brandon Ayuk, they don't want me back. That's the quote that made all the headlines. The 49ers don't want me back. Now, I assume that was referring to a long-term contract, which negotiations are ongoing, but reportedly not close. And I kind of get from the 49ers perspective, they're all in to win this year. They don't want to trade him. They don't want to get rid of him. They want to win the Super Bowl this year. At the same token, maybe they don't want to give Brandon Ayuk some massive, massive contract. So maybe that's where the stalemate is. I don't know. What's your read on the Brandon Ayuk situation right now?
I was hoping that this would be resolved, over this at some point during the past month, because talking about it is just like it's not helping anything. Um, I don't know what to say. I mean, I still think that Ayuk is going to be on the 49ers. That's what makes the most sense to me. I try to be logical with these situations, but sometimes the irrationality can creep in when feelings get hurt, and money is obviously the driving force here. I mean, Brandon Ayuk is an absolute stud. We know that the 49ers should be awesome, actually, with or without Brandon Ayuk this coming season, but he is their best wide receiver, and he's young, and he's a guy. He's the classic example of a guy that you sign to a long-term contract. Like, I remember there was a particular website that kept beating the drum that the Vikings should trade Justin
Yeah.
Jefferson. Yeah, that did not work out. That did not come to fruition. The Vikings did the smart thing, locked him up. That's what the 49ers should do with Brandon Ayuk. Trading a guy like this in the absolute, maybe not even in the prime of his career yet, still on, like, peaking.
Yeah.
It makes no sense in the world. I think they got to figure this out.
And, Debo's contract is going to be up too. And to me, I'd much rather have Brandon Ayuk than Debo from a sustainability perspective. I
Right.
mean, Debo's an
And Ricky
yeah.
Pearsall is a better one for one replacement for Debo than he is for Brandon
Yeah.
Ayuk.
And I think that's how it's going to play out. I think Debo's the one that's going to be gone, and Ayuk's to be the one that stays. But that would be my bet right now, but it's messy for sure. All right. And by Debo gone, I mean not this year. I mean next year. I wasn't referring to 49ers are all in to win this year, obviously. All right. Juwan Johnson was one of our big discrepancies versus the market. We had a big position on Juwan Johnson. Then it comes out Juwan Johnson had foot surgery. Hopefully, should be back for week 1. Not great. I have completely backed off drafting Juwan Johnson while we see how this foot surgery plays out. They have Taysom Hill on the roster. They have the island, Foster Moreau. This kid, Delin Holker, has been making a bunch of noise at OTAs. Saints fans keep tweeting me about Delin Holker. But anyways, Evan, what are your thoughts on the Juwan Johnson situation?
Yeah, I would probably completely back off of him right now, and hopefully we can get some more Taysom tight end moments, because those sure can be fun. But I don't know. I think it's pretty straightforward here. The guy got injured. We don't like we particularly try to avoid players that come into the season injured, and he's going to be on that list. That's a huge red flag list. Juwan Johnson, probably a DND right now.
Yeah, you got to see where Taysom is listed as a quarterback. He is listed. I'm sorry, where Taysom is listed as a tight end. He is listed as a tight end on DraftKings. I believe on Underdog, he is a quarterback, but obviously way more value. And really, the only place he has value is where he's listed at as a tight end. Speaking of the Saints, story number 15 is this Alvin Kamara contract stuff. So Kamara does not show up on the last day of mandatory OTAs. Agent says it's for contract related reasons. I'm not really sure what that means. I mean, Kamara is likely going to be cut after this season. I assume he's trying to take a stand against that preemptively, but his cap number this year is 18.55 million based on average annual value of his contract, cash contract. He's the second highest paid running back in the league beyond CMC. So I don't know really what he can say here, Evan. Any takes on the Kamara situation?
Well, I listened to Nick Underhill and Mike Triplets, both longtime Saints beat writers, their podcast on this. So they actually did like 2 podcasts on it, and I couldn't really get a strong read on how they felt about this situation, or even if it was a particularly significant situation. I did think it was interesting that at one point Mike Triplett mentioned that they thought that Kendra Miller, who's a guy who I thought was like a maybe going to be a big time sleeper this year, had taken a step back. Now we're talking about 5 non-training camp practices in June, and for to take a step back during that time period, I don't know if that matters whatsoever. It is true that Kendra Miller had a rough offseason last year as well, though. So, are we sensing a trend here? That is a bit of a concern. But that was my biggest takeaway from those podcasts, and I'm not sure what to think about the Alvin Kamara thing.
Yeah, the Kendrick stuff is scary. I'm hesitant to believe that someone took a step back when he wasn't even that productive or played that much last year. And we're talking about basic shorts and t-shirt practices in June. But yeah, something to watch for sure. I've been
Yeah.
taking Marshawn Lloyd and Ty Chandler ahead of Kendry for now, but I think all those guys are interesting and in play for sure. All right. Number 14 is an interesting one. George Pickens mixing into the slot as Steelers OTAs. Now, one of my big problems with George Pickens is that they didn't get him any easy targets. Last year, he was in the slot just 16% of the time. His ADOT was 13.7 yards. That was top 25 among wide receivers in the NFL. Now Deontay Johnson's gone. There's certainly way more room. I mean, way more room for targets. However, we have an Arthur Smith offense here, like we just said, which is going to be very run heavy. We've been lower than market significantly on George Pickens. I feel good about that considering how high he's going. But what do you think about the report he's going to play in the slot? Evan, any other George Pickens thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that he's gonna, wind up as a true slot receiver or anything like that. It's good that he's showing some ability to move around the formation. At the end of the day, the pass volume projection for Pittsburgh should be about as low as any team in the NFL, and that's the biggest concern for all the pass catchers, as we obviously experienced with Drake London and Kyle Pitts in Atlanta. Roman Wilson, who they drafted in the third round, they love, like that's going to be their slot receiver. I believe sooner
Mhm.
rather than later. At least Calvin Austin has also generated some buzz, but yeah, it's just how many targets is even in the mix for George Pickens, and that's the biggest concern. I'm sure that he'll have some explosive plays
Yeah.
because that's what George Pickens does, but for like just very 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 little consistency. You think about the way so they had really their offensive line became one of the best run blocking offensive lines in the NFL last year, and then they went and made huge additions through the draft. They drafted Troy Fatanu in the first round, Zach Frazier in the second round, and Mason McCormick in the fourth round. It is very obvious how the Steelers are trying to build their offense, and it's not going to lead to very much pass volume whatsoever.
Yeah. By the way, Brandon Thorne's offensive line rankings are now out. If you have Draft Kit Pro, you can view those now. Steelers are up to 15th uh, in Thorne's rankings on the back of those additions that Evan just talked about for sure. All right. Story number 13. Travis Kelce admits it might be better for the team if he doesn't play on every snap. So the quote from Kelce, and there was another quote that he said, like, yeah, saddle me up and ride me or whatever, But the quote that stuck out to me from Kelce during OTAs was he said, as much as I want to be out there every single play, I understand that it's for the betterment of the team when I'm not. Now, last year, in the games that Kelce played in during the regular season, he ran a route on 74% of the dropbacks. Obviously, he can still play at a really high level. I don't think his usage is going to fall off that much. But once we start getting down into the 60, 65% of the snaps range, you start to have a problem. Now, can they do that? Will they do that when the chips are down in the games? I don't know. Evan, what do you think about the quotes around Kelsey's usage this year?
I mean, I think it's what's best for the team. Um, you know, I I think that it's what's best for the team. I think this is a really straightforward one. It's Travis Kelce has come to grips with the fact that this is what's best for the team, so he's going to accept that. And then they'll ramp him up as the season
Yeah.
progresses and they get toward the playoffs. And in the playoffs, I mean, he's 35 years old. He's got $1 billion. I guess they're going to get married now. He's got $1 billion soon to be wife, and yeah, there's no. I mean, he's got things to worry about, CTE. I mean, everything,
Yeah.
So it makes the most sense for him to be limited on a play-to-play basis. I still love him in fantasy. He's going to be in there for all the crucial passing game moments for sure, and his target per route should be as high as any tight ends in the league.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. I haven't been taking him when he goes in, the second or third round. When he falls to the fourth round, I'm okay with it. Like, who do you prefer between Laporta and Kelsey? And do you still think Kelsey's worth, a second or third round fantasy pick?
Um, shoot, I think I have Kelsey ahead of Laporta.
Okay.
I think, yeah. I mean, that's going to be an ongoing debate. They're obviously really close. They're in the same tier. But yeah, I mean, for right now, I have Kelsey ahead. No,
Yeah.
no, no. I have Laporta ahead.
You have
I had Kelsey ahead, and
Yep.
then I moved Laporta ahead of him.
Yep, I just checked. Back-to-back
Yeah,
spots here in the top 150, Laporta and Kelsey.
back to back spots. That's
Yeah,
exactly right. Yeah.
Laporta, one spot ahead. The other thing that I would say about the Kelsey stuff is not only is he saying that, yeah, I can run less routes, play less snaps. That's fine. That's for the betterment of the team. They also have Xavier Worthy now. They also have Marquise Brown. They're also going to get Rashee Rice back from suspension. They may not need Kelsey as much as they previously did, and that's kind of one of the other reasons why I've kind of backed off Kelsey there at the 2-3 turn and stuff like that. But story number 12, Marshawn Lloyd got a ton of hype at OTAs, but I think the bigger quotes that came out were from LaFleur, which he said philosophically, no matter who the runner is, typically we like to platoon those guys, whether it's 2 or 3 guys. So when you pair that quote about the running back by committee, you pair that with the A.J. Dillon may not make the team speculation, and you pair that with the positive Marshawn Lloyd hype from OTAs, you start to see where people can really get high on Marshawn Lloyd. I believe Marshawn Lloyd is now my most drafted player so far in best ball. Evan, what do you think about what's going on with Packers backfield as we come out of OTAs?
Yeah, so this is an interesting one. My initial read, and I think it might have been wrong, was that the Packers signed Josh Jacobs, especially to this one. It's essentially a 1 year contract where they can just ride the heck out of him for 1 year and actually move on from the. There's only guaranteed money in the first year of his 4 year $40 million deal. So I thought that, well, they signed him because he's shown that he can be a workhorse. Average 23 touches a game, whereas Aaron Jones could not. But now I look back in hindsight, Matt LaFleur made the platoon comment. He expressed disappointment that the Packers, after signing Josh Jacobs, got rid of Aaron Jones. So he was actually under the impression that they might have both of those guys. They go and use the 88th pick on Marshawn Lloyd. I think that there's probably some truth to the fact that they want to use multiple running backs. You look at Matt LaFleur's history. He was the guy rotating the big dog and Dion Lewis in Tennessee. So he does believe in that. It's just, is Marshawn Lloyd, as a later third round rookie, capable of jumping in to a fairly significant role on which you'd be relied to, work around Jordan Love, who might be an MVP candidate this year, obviously is a player in ascent. Will Marshawn Lloyd earn that? And I think that the Packers want him to, but Josh Jacobs is also a guy who has proven in over the last 3 years that he can be a true workhorse. That's why I thought that they primarily targeted him in free agency, but the platoon comments are something to be concerned about.
Yeah, and as Evan mentioned there, dropped Josh Jacobs from 13th overall to 21st overall in his top 150 rankings. Story number 11 out of San Francisco. Sounds like Elijah Mitchell is way ahead of all the other backups right now. And, that doesn't surprise me. It makes perfect sense. I don't think the 49ers have ever had an issue with the production for Elijah Mitchell. In fact, I think the 49ers love what Elijah Mitchell gives them when he's on the field. The problem is he's had such a hard time staying healthy, but I'm not surprised that he's way ahead of Isaac Guerendo or Jordan Mason right now. And I think if Elijah Mitchell can sustain health, he'll probably stay ahead of those guys. Evan, any thoughts on Elijah Mitchell in the 49ers backup situation?
Yeah, just not a big news item, I don't think. I mean, definitely fantasy relevant, but nothing surprising here. Elijah Mitchell has shown when he's gotten the opportunities that he can be an explosive runner.
Yeah.
Isaac Guerendo, 4th round rookie with a very, very, very limited track record in college. Patrick Taylor, a guy that they essentially got off waivers from the Packers. Jordan Mason has been a guy who generated hype at times, but is more of like a special teamer. Um, there's not a whole lot of competition at the number 2 running back spot, I don't think, for Elijah Mitchell. That's his, as long as he can stay healthy, which has been an issue for him in his career.
And similar situation to that, I just wanted to note, CEH also reports, out of OTAs that no one's really going to push or has pushed CEH for the number 2 job behind Isaiah Pacheco, similar to Eli Mitchell, like maybe not the best back, but goes so late and is one injury away from a really good role on one of the best offenses in the NFL, both Eli Mitchell and CEH. All right. Number 10, Raheem Morris gave a quote. It felt to me like it was a shot at Arthur Smith. Raheem Morris, on his plan for Bijan Robinson, he said, get the ball to Bijan as much as you can in as many ideal situations as you possibly can, which I understand that Bijan Robinson touched the ball a reasonable amount. He did not touch it around the goal line. He did not touch it in a lot of situations that I thought he should have. He didn't get enough carries. They had CPAT and Algier getting plenty of carries as well. So it's just good to hear Raheem Morris say that. And that has sent, I see Bijan Robinson going as high as 6th overall now. I've seen people take him 4th and 5th overall at times also. So this quote has definitely moved the market a little bit at the top. Evan, any thoughts on the Raheem Morris Bijan stuff?
I listened to an interview with Raheem Morris on The Athletic. I don't know exactly where this quote came from, but on this interview with on The Athletic with Robert Mays, Raheem Morris was asked, like, what is this offense going to be about? And he was like, Bijan Robinson, with no mention of Tyler Algier or any of the other guys. So that aligns with what I heard from Raheem Morris, and is unsurprising. I think that he will be the obvious centerpiece of the Atlanta Falcons offense.
Yeah, and it's a shame because I do think Tyler Algier can play, right? But you can't
Yeah.
take Bijan as high as you took him and then not use him in this massive, massive way. So, yeah. Number 9, as we speculated, Evan, previously, Darren Waller officially filed for retirement. I mean, I talked to Ron on a little bit about this. It's not great. He thinks it's going to be some mix of Bellinger, Theo Johnson, Lawrence Cager got some hype during OTAs. Lawrence Cager is the kind of guy that's going to look good at OTAs. I've talked about Market Monday, like Jaleel McLaughlin's the kind of guy that looks good in OTAs, just like Lawrence Cager will. But yeah, any thoughts on the fallout of Darren Waller retiring?
No, I kind of expected this. I hung out with Jordan a little bit at the combine, and I was like, are these Darren Waller retirement rumors, solid? And he was like, yeah, they're for real. And so I've been expecting this for a while. I just think that this passing offense is going to revolve so much around Malik Neighbors.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really high on Malik Neighbors this year. I think he's a guy that we collectively. I understand that there's going to be quarterback issues. I think that Daniel Jones and even Drew Lock and Brian Dable are they're good enough to get the ball to Malik Neighbors relentlessly. That's going to be the offense. Darren Waller had already become an afterthought, I think.
Yeah, I like Malik Neighbors as a round 3 pick in best ball. I don't think you're going to need to spend a round 3 pick to get him in home league once home league season gets here, because people are not going to want to take a rookie wide receiver whose quarterback is Daniel Jones. But I think that'll be a mistake. If he starts going 4th or 5th round in home leagues, that's a smash on Neighbors. Go back to Cleveland here for number 8. Jerome Ford was operating as the starter during Browns OTAs. Now, this remains a tricky one because we don't know when Nick Chubb is coming back. My personal bet is that Nick Chubb is going to miss more time than people think, than less time. The question on Jerome Ford is, will he get goal line work? He didn't really get much of it last year. Now they have Dante Foreman, who theoretically profiles pretty well at the goal line. Evan, any thoughts on Jerome Ford working as the starter at Browns OTAs?
They've also got Naheem Hines and Pierre Strong, who has generated some hype. Really, really good athlete, primarily a special teamer to this point in his career. But I mean, they've got 4 options there. So they are prepared in case Nick Chubb misses more time than anticipated. I think, again, going back to the complexion of the offense, this offense, I think, is going to change. I think that they could use 3 or even 4 backs. I mean, we just mentioned 4 options right there. I think that they could use a lot of guys, and this is going to be a potentially frustrating situation in fantasy until Nick Chubb comes back, and maybe even after Nick Chubb comes back.
Yeah, I will say that if you are in that best ball format that is September only, that I think is on DK right now, Deontay Foreman's a super interesting pick there. He's going so late, and we know Nick Chubb is almost certainly not going to play in September.
Well, we've seen that Deontay Foreman can run the football, and he is on a one for one basis the probably the closest resemblance to Nick Chubb that the Browns have.
Sure. All right. I think the winner of most hype for the offseason, for the OTA period, goes to Braylon Allen. I mean, I could not open Twitter without someone, Jets beat writer, Jets reporter, someone saying Braylon Allen looks unreal. Braylon Allen has dusted Isaiah Davis. Braylon Allen is going to be the number 2 running back behind Breece Hall. I mean, it was absolutely relentless. Now, remember, Braylon Allen is the 4th round rookie running back out of Wisconsin who is absurdly young. I believe he was the youngest player in this entire draft, 6'1", 235. The thing that caught my eye was a lot of people in OTAs talking about how good he looked and how much they used him catching the football. So someone who could have standalone value, maybe probably not much, but could have some standalone value, and one injury away from a pretty good role interests me. Talked about this on Market Monday a ton, Evan, but we need to get your take on Braylon Allen.
Yeah, so Braylon Allen, you're right. He just turned 20 in January. So as of the end of the college football season, he was 19 years old. He was born in 2004. Okay, just think about that. Um, he's a huge guy with athleticism, and so it's not surprising that a guy like that would be popping a little bit in like OTAs and minicamps style of stuff. I mean, he went in the 4th round. One of the books on him is that he's a big back who doesn't run particularly tough, and he's not super instinctive as a running back. He was a converted linebacker. He had a bunch of catches this past year, but he averaged under 5 yards per reception. So I don't know. He's like a mid 4th round pick. We're just going to have to see. I mean, the June hype,
Yes.
it can go either way, and that's the case on Braylon Allen. But I mean, he's an intriguing guy and certainly a name to keep in mind.
For sure. And that's a battle that I'll be looking at in camp. I was trying to get as much Braylon Allen as I could when he was going in round 20, 19, 18. Now it's getting to the point where you have to start spending like around 15 or 16 pick on Braylon Allen. That's starting to get expensive for sure. Number 6, Audric Estime. I hope I didn't butcher that. Had a knee scope. And then we had some stuff I talked about on Market Monday, quotes from reporters saying, Jaleel McLaughlin is smashing. Will Javonte Williams even make the team? You can go back to 2 Market Mondays ago. I addressed that. Wanted to get Evan's take, though, on Broncos backfield. We have Javonte, we have Estime, we have McLaughlin, and then we have Samaje Perine, who we already mentioned there as well.
Yeah, so I think this is another one that's very, very much up in the air. I don't really have any firm takes on it. I'm a pro Audric Estime guy. It's very unfortunate about this injury. I wonder if that's one of the reasons that he fell in the draft. Obviously, he ran the 4.71 at the combine, but he ran 4.56 at his pro day. His tape was awesome. I mean, he is the classic, like, big and physical, will run over you and could bust big plays just as a runner. Like a poor man's Derrick Henry, basically. Very, very questionable in the passing game. Javonte Williams is probably a better natural talent, but he's a guy that leaves yards on the field because his vision isn't great, doesn't play to his size all the time. That's what Audric Estime does. And then we don't. So Perine's still on the roster, but maybe he will end up not being on the roster. Jaleel McLaughlin is going to have a role in the backfield, but he's 180 something pounds.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a backfield to monitor. I think that they're going to be good in the running game as a whole. Their offensive line is pretty good. Sean Payton has always had really good running games on an efficiency basis. So it's a backfield to monitor, but moving parts.
Yeah, I think people forget like the book on Javonte Williams coming out was like exciting, and then he blows out his knee. The Broncos came out, and I thought this was an encouraging quote and said like, we understand Javonte was coming back from the ACL last year. We expect much bigger things. Now he's 2 years removed from the ACL. So I'm still optimistic on Javonte Williams, but there's no doubt there's a ton of competition there. All right. Number 5 story, Kyron Williams missed OTAs with another foot issue. Now, I want to be clear that it looks like he's going to be fine. He was already back running and working out on the side at the end of OTAs, but still, this is Kyron Williams' third foot issue in the last 2 years, and they spent a third round pick on Blake Corum. So, Evan, I think Kyron Williams is going to be there at the beginning of training camp. Any thoughts on his latest foot injury, though, and his outlook?
Well, I think it's potentially a means to boost Blake Corum in rankings because I mean this running game is going to be badass. They've got about 1,000 pounds on their interior offensive line with after the free agent moves that they made, moving Steve Avila into center. Um, their running game has been just lights out. No matter who they've put in there, really since the end of like Cam. You remember Cam Akers had that big time run at the end of 2022. Kyron was a stud all last year. I mean, it lends more credence to the validity of that Blake Corum pick, and maybe it means to move him up. I still think that the sky is the ceiling, or the sky the ceiling is sky high for Kyron Williams. Got to get this cliche right for Kyron Williams, and I'm not too worried about this injury. I think he's a fringe first round pick.
Yeah, and he's going way later right now. I think come home league season, like Evan said, he's going to go far higher, Will Kyron. Number 4 was a small story, but I thought at least worth noting. Tank Dell, who remember broke his leg last year and somehow got shot over the offseason. Tank Dell was a full participant in OTAs. I'm not sure people realize how good Tank Dell was before going down in December of last year. I mean, this was a round 3 rookie who earned 7.5 targets per game right out of the gate and was kind of unguardable for a lot of it. Now, people are going to have questions. Oh, they added Steph Diggs. They added Joe Mixon. I think some of that can be mitigated by a change in philosophy. Texans were only 19th in pass rate over expectation last year. They were 22nd in neutral situation first down throw rate. That should spike with year 2 Stroud and Steph Diggs out there. So I think we're going to get more volume. So I'm not too worried about Steph Diggs blocking up Tank Dell. But Evan, how are you thinking about Texans wide receivers right now?
I like them all, and I don't know if that's sort of like a cop out or a hedge, but I like all 3 of them. Um, and I kind of want to be above market on all 3. Um, we're not really worried about Tank Dell's injury
Yeah.
at this point. This is just kind of a means to talk about the player, and the player was an absolute baller as a rookie. I think that Steph Diggs still has a lot to offer, as we talked about with Matt Harmon as a short to intermediate receiver, and I think that Nico Collins emerged as an alpha number 1. I think my Texans team preview is up on the
Yeah.
website. I got the Texans and the Ravens written up so far. I don't really have anything negative to say. I think that I think that CJ Stroud could throw like 45, 50 touchdowns this year. I mean, he's like my MVP pick. I know that sounds like exaggeration and hyperbole, but that I think is within the range of outcomes. They're playing indoors. They don't have a scary schedule. Look at look at how CJ Stroud, behind the most injured offensive line in the NFL, performed last year. Bobby Slovic coming back. I mean, they have all the ingredients to have an extremely productive passing offense, and Tank Dell is obviously going to be a huge part of that.
Yeah, you can go back and listen to our awards show. I mean, CJ Stroud is among the favorites to be the MVP. It's not like a hot take at all. He's among the shortest prices to be MVP. We talked about that on the awards show. All right, number 3 story, Ladd McConkey mostly working out of the slot at OTAs. I know there was some question on him coming out, whether he'd play outside or in the slot. I think the point that people were trying to make is that he can play both, which I like to see. You want to be able to play both. I don't want to stereotype Ladd McConkey into saying he's only going to play in the slot. I just think it's interesting that he was mostly in the slot at OTAs. But yeah, Evan, how are you thinking about Ladd as a rookie and maybe him versus Josh Palmer for you?
So the comparison that I like the best for Ladd McConkey pre-draft was Emmanuel Sanders, who was like an almost straight 50-50 perimeter slot receiver. Josh Palmer also can play in the slot, and Quentin Johnston, really, I mean, using him closer to the line of scrimmage is what they have to do, and what Greg Roman has all but pledged that they are going to do to get the ball in his hands, because he is not a ball winner on the outside at X receiver. So I think that just the fact of the matter is, like, they're going to use all 3 of these guys, in the slot and move them around. And at the end of the day, like targets are going to be hard to come by, and one of the run heaviest offenses in the league. That's what I think we all should expect from the Chargers. So I don't know. I think that there's definitely some room for Ladd McConkey to get overhyped because, oh, he's the number one receiver for Justin Herbert, but that pass volume is going to be an issue, I
Yeah.
think.
Evan looked like he has Lad about a round and a half ahead of Josh Palmer, which I think makes sense. There's a much larger gap in ADP in the best ball streets, and I disagree with that. I don't think the gap should be more than, a round or two between Lad and Josh Palmer. Number two story. Tucker Kraft tore his pectoral. I guess he was lifting or something, and he tore his pec. They say he'll be back for week 1. Maybe he'll be back earlier than that, sometime during camp. It has caused me to take more shots on Luke Musgrave over the last few weeks, just considering Tucker Kraft's going to come into camp already injured. Evan, any thoughts on Packers tight end situation?
I'm just buying Packers offensive players wherever I can because I think that this is an offense to buy into big time. The arrow is still pointing up, I think, on Jordan Love and Luke Musgrave. I mean, his outlook clarifies a little bit here with the Tucker Kraft injury. I mean, on down to Marshawn Lloyd. I think this is an offense to invest in. Every year, I think we try to identify, 6, 7, 8 offenses to invest in. Sometimes they're really obvious. Sometimes they're not as obvious. To me, I think that the Packers this year are an obvious offense to invest in. Luke Musgrave, absolutely draft him.
All right. And the number one story out of OTAs, Najee Harris drops weight, plans to play lighter this year. Now, Najee Harris has been so unexplosive. I mean, just cannot break off big runs. Says he's down to 235 now and plans to get even lighter. Najee Harris entering a contract year after Steelers didn't pick up the option. Other positives for Najee Harris from this offseason have been documented. I mean, run game Hardo, Arthur Smith, we've already talked about, is now the offensive coordinator. Quarterback position is stabilized. I'm not saying it's good, but it's stabilized. It's not going to be wild like Kenny Pickett and Mason Rudolph or whatever else. As Evan said, they already spent a ton of draft capital at offensive line, up to 15th in Thorne's ranks. And so I'm not excited about Najee. I don't think he has like huge games, which is not great for best ball in his bag. And I think Jalen Warren's a better player. I could see Arthur Smith, though, being a real hardo about running Najee Harris into the ground here. So yeah, Evan, any reaction to Najee losing weight and Pittsburgh backfield thoughts?
I'm always a proponent of running backs shedding a few pounds and getting a little bit quicker. I don't think it's going to turn Najee Harris into a guy who runs 4.4 or anything like that. I think he's still going to be a 4.6 guy and, get caught from behind and not, he's never been a guy who breaks off a lot of 20-yard runs. And I think that they're going to still use, they signed, Arthur Smith's boy, Cordero Patterson,
Yeah.
and Jalen Warren obviously returns and he's shown, a lot. But yeah, I think that Najee Harris will be at the head of the pack. And again, in a situation where they're going to run the ball with extreme volume behind a really good run blocking offensive line that has been supplemented by 3 pretty highly drafted rookies. I mean, there's going to be a lot. One of the big concerns, though, I will have for the Steelers running backs, both Najee Harris and Jalen Warren are good in the passing game. How many targets are they going to get in this situation where the Steelers are going to be hell bent on 40 rushing attempt games?
Yeah.
There's not going to be a lot of pass volume in the offense whatsoever, regardless of whether it's Russell Wilson or Justin Fields under center. It's just they're not going to want to throw the ball. It's just going to be a lot of handoffs, and we know that targets in the passing game for running backs are worth like 2.5 times what carries are for running backs.
For sure. All right. Before we get out of here, I just want to address a few other changes from Silva's top 150. Once again, if you have DraftKit Pro, you can access Silva's top 150 rankings for this season. First one is Derrick Henry up from number 37 overall to number 29 overall. I just gave my take on Derrick Henry during Market Monday. That's the previous episode. You guys can go back and listen to that. But Evan, go ahead. Why move Derrick Henry up from 37 to 29 here?
Right now, so how I usually make changes this time of year is I'm doing team previews. I look more in depth into players, and I make changes based off that. And also, I start drafting, and I get in the rooms and I try to gauge ADP. And with Derrick Henry, I was too low on him. I want him to be in a range where the people that are using the top 150 as a draft, as you know, and as an in draft tool, have an opportunity to get him. And I want to be high on Derrick Henry this year. I think he has a chance to lead the NFL in rushing
Yeah.
touchdowns. You know what I mean? I mean, if you were to set odds, Christian McCaffrey obviously would be up there. Derrick Henry would be in the top five.
Oh,
And so I want to give the subscribers, the people, a chance to get him in their
yeah.
drafts.
I talked about this on Market Monday. Please go back and listen to it. But we do have Derrick Henry projected for, I believe, the second most rushing touchdowns in the NFL behind Christian McCaffrey. Other move Evan made, I like this one. Jackson Smith and Jigba up from 79 overall to 71 overall. Also up 7 spots in the wide receiver rankings themselves. Evan, why make the move on JSN?
Yeah, looking more into some advanced stuff with regard to the Seattle receivers, I actually think that, been a huge Tyler Lockett supporter for a really long time. I think that this is the year under the new OC where the Seahawks they move Jackson Smith and Jigba into that number two, maybe even number one receiver role, and Tyler Lockett kind of moves down into the number three role. I think that this has the chance to be a really, really big leap year for Jackson Smith and Jigba, who I think had a better on field rookie season than is
Oh,
commonly like remembered. Um, I think he's a huge leap candidate.
the way they used him last year was embarrassing. I mean, flat out embarrassing. And we're going to have a show in the next, I don't know, 1 to 2 weeks on coaching change fallout. And we're going to talk about the new scheme that Seattle is putting in there. It has to be a good thing for JSN. I mean, it can't be any worse than
Yes.
the way they used JSN last year.
Yeah, he was a winner against man coverage on a consistent basis. I again, big time sophomore leap candidate.
Last one to mention here, Christian Watson up from number 76 overall to number 70 in Silva's top 150. Why make the move on Christian Watson?
Just a small tweak, and I like to tweak my rankings to favor guys with upside. I understand the downside of Christian Watson. So does everybody else who's paid any kind of attention to fantasy football over the last couple of years. But Christian Watson, when he was in the games over the last couple of seasons, Jordan Love would
Yeah.
force feed him the rock in scoring position, and we know that he has massive, Martavis Bryant level big play capability. Hopefully they can, figure out the injury stuff. Obviously that's hoping, but I want to be high on upside, and Christian Watson has it in spades.
Yeah, and we talked about that story a couple months ago, how Christian Watson's like going out of his way to really try to find the root of his hamstring problems and try to figure out a way to optimize better for some balance between his hamstrings. All right. This was great. Great to have Evan back. I know this went a little long, but we had a lot of stuff to cover. If you are not yet subscribed to the EstablishTheRun.com podcast, be sure you are by searching for it anywhere podcasts are found. I do think that you guys should be subscribed on YouTube. Not only is there unique content on YouTube, which is obviously totally free, but also these shows, just the stuff that we are doing. Shout out to producer Ryan on the graphics. Makes a big difference when you're watching. So head to YouTube and subscribe. For Evan, for producer Luke, for producer Ryan, I am Adam. Good luck, everybody.